Hey beauty, in this episode, I challenge you to think about what God wants you to put inside your body, what God wants you to eat. I challenge you to think about how God has called you to live your life. Before we get into the show, I want to offer you a free gift. It is a free cheat sheet called Hope for Your Health, a simple cheat sheet for getting started with holistic health God's way. If you're interested in this free cheat sheet, go to herholistichealing.com/free. With all that being said, let's get into the show. Welcome to Her Holistic Healing. Do you want more energy and less anxiety so that you can do all the things? Are you searching for meal ideas, essential oils, and other holistic treatments? Do you wish you could know which direction to take with your health so that you could finally feel better? Hey, I'm Alexandra. I love Jesus. I'm a wife, mom of 3, and registered nurse with years of experience in clinical research. I also wanted more energy so that I could have more fun and keep up with my growing child. I too was confused about all the different diet and treatment options. I too wanted to wake up every day and feel good, but I felt anxious because I couldn't solve the mystery of my health. Until God showed me that He is the source of true healing. In this podcast, you will learn holistic treatments and Bible truths that will lead you to the peace, joy, and freedom that you have been hoping for. So what do you say we take a break from the mind-numbing humdrum busyness? Let's rest and let God be our healer and helper. Hey beauty, in this episode I just wanted to say before I start that I might step on your toes a little bit. I'm doing that to make a point. Before I say what I'm going to say, I just also want to say that I'm not perfect. I'm not saying that I'm saying all this coming from a place of perfection. So I just wanted to say that before we get started. I wanted to talk about today, I wanted to challenge you and ask you, what does God want you to eat? I also want to ask you, how does God want us to live our lives? How did He intend for us to live our lives? When it comes to money, for instance, here in America, I know that there are a lot of people that listen to this show from other countries, but at least in America, about 8 out of 10 Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So the majority of us live paycheck to paycheck. In the Bible, it says that we should be saving our money, we shouldn't be in debt. It says all those things, right? And yet in our culture, it's so normal to just put something on a credit card, to confuse a want versus a need. We often tell ourselves that we need something when we truly don't need it, we just want it, right? And that's really something that I want to work on in 2024. I want to be a really good steward, such a better steward of the money that God has blessed me with. What about our relationships? Did God really intend for us to spend so much time, quote, socializing with people on social media, people that are not around us, people that we don't even know? Did He want us to just continue to scroll through our feed, to comment on certain things, to be social in that way? Or did He want us to actually spend time with our kids, our family members, our friends who are right in front of us? I used to listen to this podcast called Java with Julie. That's Juli. It's with Julie Slattery, who's a Christian psychologist who talks about sex from a biblical perspective. And she would talk about how, if you're listening to this with kids, you may want to pause me. She would talk about how young guys, they can't even have sex with their wives because they've watched so much porn that it's just, their expectations of sex are just not realistic at all. So they have a real problem in this area. And of course, females have porn addictions as well. Is that something that God intended for us? Did God want us to have these relationship issues? What about education? When we think about name brand schools, or any schools, a lot of schools, they just are teaching these strange, damaging ideologies. Does God want us to go into further debt for our kids to go to these name brand schools, to these schools that are teaching things that are against God? Maybe, I don't know, maybe he does. Maybe for some reason he does want your kid to go to a certain school. I'm not saying that it's bad for you to do it. I'm just saying that maybe we should pray about these things, right? How do we spend our time? Do we spend our time in front of the TV? How much time do we spend in front of the TV? How much time do we spend scrolling through these tiny boxes that we can hold in our hands? When we think about all these scenarios that I brought up, a lot of us may not be living the life that God intended for us, right? And I don't say this in a condemning way. I just want us to be honest with ourselves and think about it. This leads me to what does God want us to eat? If you've been listening to this show for a while and you've heard my story, I used to be a junk food queen. I used to live on pizza rolls, on sugar, or fake sugar as it is. I used to not believe that food could do anything for my health. Looking back now, I really see how moody I was and that I didn't have much energy. Part of the reason for that is I didn't sleep enough. When I was preparing for this episode, I decided to look for popular junk food that Americans eat. I came across s'mores Pop-Tarts. I used to eat Pop-Tarts every day when I was when I was younger and when I was in college. So I decided to look at the label. So s'mores Pop-Tarts contain enriched flour, wheat flour. So right off the bat, it contains gluten. Gluten is a part of wheat, rye, or barley. And wheat in and of itself let's back up. Gluten, I don't avoid gluten at all costs, but when I can, I try to avoid it just because gluten is kind of hard on our guts. And when it comes to these processed grains, they're not good for us. If we were to go back in time and eat grains that were not processed, those I believe would be good for us. So when I eat grains, I try to eat organic sprouted grains. So this contains wheat. These Pop-Tarts contains wheat. They contain sugar, high fructose corn syrup. I was looking on the FDA website, and according to the FDA, there's no research to show that high fructose corn syrup is bad for you. I think that this is BS. Sorry, but I don't think that the FDA does a very good job. I think that maybe back in the day it did, but I don't really trust the FDA. High fructose corn syrup, first of all, corn in this country contains GMOs, most of the corn in this country. So this contains high fructose corn syrup. It contains soybean. Once again, soybean, a lot of the soy in this country has been processed, and it contains GMOs. These Pop-Tarts contain corn syrup. Once again, there's corn, whole wheat flour, bleached wheat flour, whey, molasses, which is not that bad for you, molasses, cocoa processed with alkali, cornstarch. There you go again. It contains cornstarch. It contains baking soda, sodium, aluminum phosphate, milk, chocolate. A lot of people have problems with milk. Once again, dairy is processed. It's been homogenized. It's been pasteurized. I try to drink raw dairy. So this product contains milk, which is a lot of people have issues with. Their body does not handle milk well. It contains salt, modified cornstarch. There we go again. It contains modified corn starch, natural and artificial flavors, soy lecithin, gelatin, egg whites, color added, and xanthan gum. So even if you think I'm being ridiculous and you disagree that there's nothing wrong with these ingredients, let's go to the other side of this food label. It contains 0% vitamin D, 8% iron, 4% thiamine, 10% niacin, 2% calcium, 2% potassium, 10% riboflavin, 10% folate. And these vitamins come from unnatural sources. To me, it doesn't really contain much of any nutrients. When I think about how I used to eat these every day, and when I think about how some people just live on these junk foods all day, it's no surprise that we have so many chronic health issues. When we think about what our body needs, it needs vitamin A, B, it needs a ton of B vitamins. There's different B vitamins, C, D, magnesium, zinc, selenium. It needs a lot of vitamins. When we're eating junk food like this so much and we're not feeding our bodies vitamins that come from like fruits and vegetables, things like that, our body is just starving for nutrients. So as I close this episode, I just really want to challenge you and give you an action step. If you want, I encourage you to just sit and talk with God. Ask Him to give you wisdom about what to eat and what boundaries you should put in place. I'm not saying that you should do what I do. I'm not saying that you should cut out s'mores Pop-Tarts. Maybe that's not what He wants you to do. Maybe it's completely fine for you. I just want to challenge you, if you feel a nudge to do something about your health, take a small action step. Perhaps take a food away, take an unhealthy food away, at least for a little bit, at least for maybe a week or something. Maybe add a superfood to your diet. When I was still a junk food queen, one thing that snapped me out of it was a coworker of mine. He said that he cut out pop, soda, whatever you want to call it, soda pop. He cut that out from his diet and he lost a ton of weight. And when he told me that story, I was just so inspired. I didn't want to lose weight at the time, but I was beginning to realize that my unhealthy food habits were probably not the best thing for my long-term health. So that was actually the first change that I made too. I cut out the pop. If you go to the episode, I believe the episode right before this one, I talk about aspartame. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. It's an artificial sweetener that has so many side effects it's so bad for our long-term health, and aspartame is often put in soda pop. So maybe that might be an action step for you. Maybe cut out a little bit of pop if you drink that all the time. Whatever action step you take, I just hope that whatever you decide to do, I hope that you decide to do something. And I hope that after you make that one small change, you will see how good it is for your body. You will maybe experience less bloating, less irritation. You might experience more energy. That's what happened for me. I started making these small changes and I was just so inspired to see what would happen when I made another small change. I'm so glad that you took the time to listen today. If you liked what you heard, will you leave me a review on Apple Podcasts so that this show can reach more people? And if you want to connect with me, go to herholistichealing.com. Matthew 11 verses 28 through 30. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls.
For you, it's easy and my burden is light.